Hello, I'm here with the final part of my look at the top 100 comics of the 20th century as chosen by the Comics Journal in issue number 210, February 1999, to celebrate the 25th or so anniversary of that. My friend Alex Eklund and I made this issue of Canon. Canon is our regular zine about comics. It has several different contributors, but this one is all Alex and I. And we interviewed the surviving list makers, broke down the list in a conversation between ourselves, lots of bizarre stats and info. We're very proud of it. It's not perfect, but we worked our asses on it. Worked our asses off on it. There's a lot in here. This original issue of the journal is pretty hard to find nowadays, unfortunately. But you can get a subscription to the journal, a digital subscription, and have access to their archives. And I believe this is available on there. I'd highly recommend reading old issues of the journal to anybody. But this issue especially was important to me. And so without further ado, I'll jump into the list. What's left of it. The top 10. At number 10, Robert Crumb in Weirdo. Crumb was the founding editor of Weirdo, one of the great comic anthologies. He ran for 12 years. He passed it off to Peter Bagge, notable cartoonist, and then later on his wife, Aileen Kaminsky Crumb, took it over. This is a great story, Uncle Bob's midlife crisis, a real standout. Anyway, so you can probably see here, the art is fantastic. Maybe never better for Crumb, and his storytelling became much more dense and I would say sophisticated, personally. He also produced every cover of Weirdo. That was part of the contract with Last Gasp. If they were going to publish this thing, they wanted to know they had some Crumb up front. Really great stuff. Highly recommended. Here's another standout. His Philip K. Dick story, The Religious Experience of Philip K. Dick. Just beautiful, beautiful work. But yeah, here's a cartoonist in his prime making phenomenal comics. Really great stuff. Highly recommended. This was published by Last Gasp just a few years ago. As far as I know, it's still available. I hope it is. I hope it always is. At number 9, Binky Brown Meets the Holy Virgin Mary. This is an underground comic. Let's see if we have a year on here. 1972. And this was pretty unique at the time for being a pretty long story. Most underground comics were anthologies. This thing was longer than a regular size comic. I think it might have even been 50 pages or so. I think this is Justin Green's best work. Clearly, they thought so too. Here it is in the top 10. Really important work historically in terms of autobiography in comics. Really great underground comic. But I'd say even past its historical significance, it's just a really damn good comic. Yeah, and comes from an experience I can't understand at all. I don't have OCD. I don't have a Catholic upbringing, but what an important work. What a great work. At number 8, Mad 1 through 24. The Harvey Kurtzman edited version of Mad. This is the 4th archives. So this is issues 19 through 24. Great cast of artists working with Kurtzman here. Wally Wood, Or who else is in this roster at the time? I always think of Wally Wood right at the top. Jack Davis, Will Elder, John Severin, as well as Wally Wood. You know, I think even for people who aren't as charmed by the rest of the EC Comics output, Mad looms pretty large. And certainly the craft is very, very high in this stuff. Whether or not you think it's funny, you know, the stuff was made 60-something years ago. So you can understand how it would age a bit. Still really well-made stuff. Kurtzman as the auteur with several really overqualified artists interpreting his work as well. Definitely good stuff. Worth checking out. These archives were printed by DC, I think a little over a decade ago. And they're probably not really available anymore. Yeah, 2012 for this guy. So, but hopefully that will be changing in the near future. Whether you think it's the best comic ever made or not, it deserves to be in print. Number 7, Donald Duck by Carl Barks. His Uncle Scrooge stuff was at number 20, so Barks has 2 of the top 20 comics. I think he and Crumb are the only 2 that can say that. Spiegelman has a book that's coming up soon, and he also edited Raw, so technically he is on the top 20 2 times as well. Though it's kind of like counting Mouse twice. Oops, spoiled it. Mouse is coming. Anyway, Donald Duck by Carl Barks. This is what he worked on first before Uncle Scrooge came around. This is what's generally considered to be his sharpest and liveliest work. I think I said before in the Uncle Scrooge video, I'm not really an expert on Barks. I sort of read them all together, so I don't have the... I'm just don't have I'm not an expert on his time periods, but fantastic work, all of it. It just looks beautiful, so clean. The storytelling is so smooth, and comics for kids that aren't dumb, you know, that adults can enjoy as well. A rare thing, unfortunately. At number 6. Sick, Sick, Sick by Jules Pfeiffer. His strip that ran in the Village Voice. This is the complete Village Voice strips, 1956 to 1966. Published as The Explainers by Fantagraphics once upon a time. What year is this from? 2008. So 17 years ago now. They've published several books of early Pfeiffer work, but this would be considered the top stuff. His proto-graphic novel Tantrum was also on the list, number 50. But these strips were hugely influential. All of the alt weekly cartoonists that would come along in the 80s and 90s, you know, this is their direct influence. Also just part of the comedy zeitgeist of the time, you know, urban neuroses. Think Woody Allen, Nichols and May. Yeah, they seem very static, right? And there's a lot of just people talking. Can't tell you if that was something that people were really doing before this. I don't know. But he's such a wonderful writer that they're really enjoyable to read. Really fun. This is a great book. I wish it was bigger. I wish the strips had a little more room to breathe. You know, the art doesn't look very impressive at this size. But Pfeiffer was just a wonderful cartoonist with a really lively line. Anyway, really enjoyable stuff. Hard to imagine on a modern list they would be this high. I just think his influence has probably waned, but Yeah, great stuff. Pfeiffer was an amazing cartoonist for a very, very long time. At number 5, you're only going to be able to see part of a book here. My apologies. I don't own any small Little Nemo books, though. And frankly, I don't know why anybody would want a small Little Nemo book. This is one of the Sunday Press collections. There's 2 of these collecting Little Nemo work. Highly recommend them if you ever come across them, even if it's just to look at them. This is really the perfect way to see the strip as it was originally presented in newspapers. Gorgeous coloring. Look at this size. Can you imagine that over 100 years ago people used to get a newspaper and this is what they opened it up to? Mind-blowing work by Winsor McCay. You know, I don't know that anyone's going to say the stories were necessarily something to write home about, but just visually so stunning, gorgeous, and frankly just jaw-dropping. It is one of the rare pieces of art, I think, that when you get to read them, it surpasses its reputation. At number 4, Mouse, the aforementioned, by Art Spiegelman. Kind of an outlier graphic novel when it came out. It found success immediately. It won a Pulitzer Prize, though I believe it was kind of a contrived Pulitzer Prize. It's a phenomenal book. Unfortunately, it was a little early. It didn't bring a bunch of other comics with it. I can't imagine anyone watching this channel doesn't know about Mouse, but it's essentially the story of Art Spiegelman's father, who was in Auschwitz, and his story of before and during and after the war. Brilliantly written. Spiegelman uses this, I don't know what you want to call it, this device of all the characters having animal heads. The Jews are mice, the Nazis are cats. That's been sort of endlessly critiqued over the years. I don't know. It never bothered me. It seems a little contrived, I know, but I think the work is so great that I'll forgive it. If that makes sense. Really beautiful stuff. You know, no one is going to mistake Spiegelman for being an amazing draftsman, but he is a great storyteller, and he's very patient with this work. You know, this thing is 200 and almost 300 pages. A big, serious comic at a time when that was not something people were used to. And an actual serious comic, not just a superhero comic where they pretended to be serious. Anyway, if you haven't read it, you should. Number 3, Pogo by Walt Kelly. In its day, a hugely successful and influential strip. The first thing you notice is that Walt Kelly is a hell of a cartoonist. He's just drawing the shit out of this thing. All of these great characters. It's pretty wordy. A lot of dialect. A lot of wordplay. But Jesus, look at these pictures. They are beautiful. He was a very important cartoonist. You know, in the early 50s, he kind of went after McCarthy. Great stuff. I find it very hard to believe that on a modern list, this would be chosen as the number 3 comic. And in fact, I wonder how many people under the age of 60 really have really strong feelings about Pogo. I could be wrong, but just feel like it's one that's influence has waned in the 21st century. But I am glad that Fantagraphics published these books. They're big, beautiful books. collecting a very important strip. Yeah, Walt Kelly could really draw. At number 2, Peanuts. Peanuts' reputation hasn't waned, and in fact, it's probably actually increased. Even though it's still very successful as a legacy strip, where there's still toys and books and movies coming out from these characters, its esteem has grown critically thanks to these books. Once again, from Fantagraphics, they published the entire 50-year run of dailies and Sundays. Over 60, well, no, over 36 books total, collecting everything. Really, I think one of the great achievements in the history of comics is getting these books out and getting all the way through the run. All of these strip collections, eventually, they suffer from sales attrition. The same people buying it at number 1 aren't the same, they're not all going to hang on for volume 22. Understandably, because it's quite a commitment of time and money and shelf space. But Peanuts by Schultz, one of the great strips. His beautiful cartooning, looks simple. I think it was Jaime Hernandez who said something like, there's nothing harder in the world to draw than Charlie Brown's head. That perfect round shape. Yeah, just great cartooning. Really wonderful line. Unmistakable. You look at a Peanut strip and there's no way you would think it was anybody besides Charles Schulz. And of course, what he's really become known for, I think, in the last 25 years is the writing. His sort of examination of post-war America and the American psyche and just the human condition. Not to sound too pretentious, but I think that's accurate. Highly recommended. You don't have to buy all of them. Generally, the 60s are considered the peak by most people, but I would say grab any one you can from a library and just start reading. They're a lot of fun. You can read them in chunks. But here we get to number 1 on the list, Crazy Cat by George Harriman. The dailies have never been comprehensively collected, but once again, Fantagraphics has collected all of the Sundays. And I should mention, Fanta published these top 3 all after this list was put out. So really following the principles espoused by the journal, trying to find the best stuff and get it into print. In Tom Spurgeon's write-up about Crazy Cat that is in the top 100 issue, he says, it was very tempting to try to be coy and pick something else, but the obvious choice was Crazy Cat, a strip that had been revered and respected by artists and intellectuals and academics going back to the 30s and 40s, something that really couldn't be said of most comics in the United States especially. Its simplistic structure basically follows a tortured love triangle between the 3 main characters, but he creates this entire little world out of these desert landscapes, and he riffs on his theme over and over and over again. But his own little language, once again, characters sort of speak in dialect, and fantastic stuff. It's a sort of strip you really kind of have to get in the groove, I think, for modern readers. It's not something you can just go to and it'll necessarily speak to you, but if you start reading them and you start to get the rhythms, it's great stuff. This is from the first round of reprints, all designed by Chris Ware. Really nice looking books. They're now being published in even larger hardcover books, which are more impressive, easier to read. Highly recommend those. Once again, don't have to buy all of them, don't have to read all of them, but maybe try to grab one from a library somewhere and give it a try. It's worth it. Also amazing that it appeared in newspapers for decades, that people just got this delivered to their front doorstep. Pretty astounding. And that's it. That's it for the top 100. As I've said a few times, this issue was very important to me when I was young, and it's something I've revisited over the years many times. And I'm glad I had the opportunity to wring everything I could out of it to make this issue of Canon. This thing's available at canonzine.bigcartel.com. I'm on the last printing. After this, it'll be done. So I have 20-something copies or so left. If you're at all interested, please check it out. I'm done talking about the titles on the list, but over the next few days, I will be releasing chats that I've had with various people about the list. Some of the conversations, they're all pretty loose. Some of them veer off topic a little bit, but more or less we kind of stick to what we're talking about here, which is a bunch of great comics that were put into a surprisingly good list by a handful of critics over 25 years ago. And while the list would not be one that people would make today, probably, it holds up surprisingly well, and worth checking out. All right. Thanks.